Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Good.
Very well, very well.
And you, Schmitty?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty good for a Monday. Yeah,
I know, right?
Tell me why.
Yeah. And a head cold.
Oh, that was me last week.
Well, I can tell you a little story. So this morning, I had a government announcement that we had to do for work. So I had to go and set up a sign and hold it before the wind blew it over while everyone took their photos. That was all fun. But somewhere in the middle of that, we had to move the sign. And it had an aluminium strut down the middle of it, which became loose in the movement and fell down and hit me in the head.
Oh.
No, it wasn't really a major deal. I was making a joke about being concussed for the rest of the day, but that was just a joke. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward now to towards the end of the day where I had a meeting on the other side of town. So I drove all the way over there with a colleague. And we had this meeting and someone said, "How's your day been?" And I said, "A bit varied." And he said, "Oh, yeah." So I started to tell the story and I talked about how I'd been hit in the head with a sign. And then we got back to the office and one of my other colleagues said, "Oh, why did I just receive a new photo to the Facebook account, the inbox?" And I said, "A new photo?" And he said, "No, a nude photo." I said, "What?" So I went around and had a little look. And sure enough, someone had sent us some dick pics.
Oh.
I know, right?
No.
Yeah.
To a work email or something.
To a work Facebook inbox.
Right.
So I replied to the person. Firstly, I stalked them to find out who they were. Turns out they have some connection to my place of employment.
So they're a real person?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'm going to hazard a guess, either very drunk or the phone was hacked or mental health
Wrong
issues.
number.
Yeah. And well, I aired on the side of wrong number. So I sent a note back to this person saying, "We received some intimate photos. I'm going to assume that was sent in error. And so I've deleted them. However, if you continue to send photos of this nature, you will be reported to the authorities as per our policy." And then I finished up with, "And I hope you enjoyed being blah, blah, blah to do with us." So just so they knew that I knew who they were, right? That we had identified them so we know who they are.
Oh.
So that's my cunning way of saying, "I know who you are, mate. I've got your address and I can come for you." Right?
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so we're laughing about that. So I was telling, then in this late interview when I said it was varied, I explained this to the guy. And at the same time as I was having this conversation, they had a slide deck up. And in the slide deck was a whole lot of little videos that they've made for us. And we were talking about content and stuff. And it's in a couple of these photos with big microphones, a bit like the microphones that we have. And at the end of me telling the story, the man who was trying to take back control over this meeting, having me just discuss the dick pics, said, "Okay, well, I've just got to turn your attention to the images on the wall. You won't see anything like that." Then I said, "I don't know, I can see a couple of BBCs." And they both could, they just started laughing. I don't even know they knew what a BBC was. But they both started laughing. And then I was like, I just left it go. And that was the end of that. So that's been my day. What about you guys? Oh, and by the way, also, they said, "Please make sure that you're telling this story when you're recording your podcast." This will actually, I'm recording tonight, so I'll tell the story. So Darcy, this one's for you.
Nice work.
I have a question, and it's only because of my unbelievably limited exposure to such things. When the picture comes through, is it erect or is it flaccid?
Well, these were erect.
I'm glad to hear that. I don't think anyone needs to see. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Well, I will extrapolate a little. There was a video. There was a video at the beginning.
A little movie.
A little
I like
movie,
it.
yeah.
A little vignette, I think we'd call it, would we? A vignette?
I don't know if it's a vignette, because isn't a vignette like a montage? It's a cutting up of things. That's how I've understood a vignette. So
a cutting up of things.
You know what I mean? Like little shots of various different things all put together.
Maybe you're right.
I don't know. Anyway, this chap had a video of himself, and I will replay this for you. Starts as a headshot, no pun intended.
Oh, you can see his face.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's worse.
And I press play, and it starts to pan down a naked torso. And when it got to the bottom of the ribs, I pressed stop and said, I think I know where this is going. So I don't need to see any more, because the two stills shot underneath that. So it came up as like a big block video and then two small smaller,
Yeah.
still shot, clearly were an erect penis.
Oh my God, this is brilliant.
Both of which were very juicy looking. So I don't know if they were like, just post cum shots or what they were. I don't know. I don't care. But I joked with my colleague and said, camera perspective is everything, isn't it? Because in the first shot, it's not that much chop. It's a bit of a chub. Yeah. It's not very interesting. Second shot, though, makes it look a lot larger.
They've probably spun it around, got down an angle, taken it.
Oh, it's closer, right? Much closer. Right. And so I was saying, camera perspective is everything. And he's like, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And I said, it's not one of the best. I've got to tell you, it's not his best work. No, it's great. Not his best work. I said I didn't say it was ugly. I just said it looked bigger in the second photo, but we both know because seeing both photos side by side that it would have been to do with the way the photo was taken. So I was like, I don't even know why you would have sent us the first one is my point. But there was a lot of sort of squishing of the testicles also with the thumb, anyway.
Oh,
yeah, anyway. That's my day at work. Did you not have the same sort of day at work?
Oddly, no. The closest I ever had to that was a guy at work who was very, very annoying. And he decided one day that he would tell me about, all of these parties he's been to and lesbian parties and blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
And,
why was he invited? But yeah.
Mentioned famous people who'd been to this party or he'd been there. I don't know. I wasn't really listening because he just talked so much rubbish. I just didn't listen. Anyway, then he started telling me how he had a big penis, and I'm like, oh, I'm really busy now. I don't want to.
It just in chat, he was telling you that.
Literally standing at the doorway to my office telling me this. And there are people on the other side of the wall that he would, so on the other side of his back are people, and nobody liked him. Anyway, then he whips out his camera, his phone, and shows me. I'm like, what are you doing? Get out.
I think that's called making a pass, is it? I presume.
Well, I mean, he was married.
I don't have much to do with it. Yeah.
I just feel like that's not okay behaviour.
I think that's kind of a forward
moot point.
Yeah. I think that's someone making a move on you in their way,
letting you know.
I
got a big cock.
Look at this bad boy, big boy, bad boy.
Bad boy.
Nice. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. Excellent chat. Have you got any work to do? Because I'm kind of busy.
Oh, my word.
Swanny, what about you? Have you had any of those in the workplace?
Not that I can remember, but, these days, back in the day, you probably would have sort of go, for God's sake, but now you'd be straight down to HR and they'd be cancelled and out of work and it would be like, wouldn't be put up with these days. Fair enough. No one wants to see walk around. But I mean, this guy wasn't trying. He was doing it quite publicly. He was quite comfortable with it, obviously.
He was
a load of this. I'm pretty proud of it.
Socially unaware. Couldn't do his job. Had nothing nice to say.
Didn't need to.
He had a big cock.
Didn't need to. That cock carried him.
Well, he said he did. He said he did.
He's Jake the peg diddle-lick with his extra leg diddle-lick.
Oh, my word.
I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are
Trial by Wine. And what are we drinking?
I'm about to crack open a very fine bottle of
soda water.
Schweppes, the original soda water. Yes,
delicious.
That's top shelf. Quite often I'm using stuff from Woolies or Coles. So yes, look at me. It must have been on sale.
I was going to say, was it 2 for 1?
Probably it was.
Bog off, buy one get one free.
What about you guys?
Well, we're on the Mount Franklin Lightly Sparkling.
Well, you disappoint me, all of you. Luckily, I am not letting the side down, although it's not wine. I am on the chutneys.
Part chutney, mango chut.
And I've got a couple of backup alcoholic ginger beers just in case. Who's got a story for us?
I do.
Ooh. Good one. Sounds to be a cracker.
Shall I commence?
Please do.
Sure. Okay. Does it have penis incidents in it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
we're done with them for now?
We're done. We're going to have to park that very much.
You disappoint me.
There are children involved. We need to park the penis.
I know where I can park the penis.
Oh, stop it.
Okay. So my sources for today's story, of which I'm going to give you all bar one, because if I read one, it will give the entire game away, are Wikipedia, thankfully, CNN, People.com, CBS News, the Fresno Bee. Love that.
Fresno Bee.
The Fresno Bee. And an episode of a series, shall we say? And I'll tell you what that is later on.
If you read Fresno B differently, is it Fresnob?
Fresnob.
Fresno B. They're my sources, and I must tell you that the last one at the end, or is sometime into it when I've revealed what I'm going to reveal. And where I'd like to start today's story is to actually ask a question of you guys, which is, do you recall what you were scared of as a child? Were there situations, things, people? What kind of things would really sort of in your psyche that sort of really scared you? Can you recall any or many?
Yeah.
I think I probably had a bit of a checklist, to be fair. And part of it was associated with watching that show, that Great Mysteries of the World. So I'm not really in that territory today. That's not what I'm talking about. But I was terrified of UFOs, scared of Dracula, werewolves. What do you call them, Schmitty? Those people that
Cryptozoology.
Cryptozoology, yeah.
Cryptids,
that stuff.
cryptids,
but I love to watch it. But that stuff, I sort of like to scare myself a bit with.
It's
fascination.
That's the
probably.
point of it. Is like you get a little bit of titillation out of it because you get scared, but also it's probably not real.
But I used to like the way it was presented, and I used to find it so engaging. The music was atmospheric, and I loved all that. That's kind of not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on a day-to-day level. What did you have nightmares about, or fearful that there was someone in your bedroom under your bed? I used to quite often dream that I found I don't know why, I found my mum dead on the toilet. Oh, I don't know. I'm laughing about that. It's not funny, but it was something that I repeatedly had. Like, were you scared of like a natural disaster, or being murdered, or kidnapped, or
I remember having a relatively recurring nightmare.
Yep.
Of the Incredible Hulk chasing me around the backyard, and I couldn't get away from him.
Yeah.
I think I've spoken about this before, about my flying dreams.
Yes,
I was like the greatest American hero, where I'd do a run up and I'd be lucky if I could get 3 meters off the ground, and then I'd crash down. So I'd sort of there'd be the Incredible Hulk coming after me, and I'd be trying to get away and never quite successfully getting away. Never grabbed either, but it was just always that tension.
Yes. What about you, Clarky and Woo? Did you have anything that springs to mind?
I'm trying to think. There's nothing that stands out, and that's not to say there wasn't a lot of things, because I think there would have been. Well, not so much clowns, but Freddy Krueger I found particularly disturbing.
So I didn't watch anything like that.
I didn't really like the movies, and so there was always that sort of bogeyman stuff going around, and I think he kind of represented that in a lot of ways. But then with those finger knife things he had going on too.
He was pretty.
But then Edward Scissorhand turned them into something romantic and beautiful.
Well, did he though? I mean, I feel like he didn't.
Apart from slicing her face
but
open.
They were less scary. Yeah, less scary because he wasn't intentionally trying to kill people with them.
Yeah.
The cuts were accidental with him. Tell me about this though. Is it not
something horrific?
I think for me, the things that used to really worry me was I was really worried I was going to get snatched, because I think my mum, and it was something that you probably told a lot as a child.
Kidnapping.
Do you know what I mean? Like snatched, like going, that I remember thinking that drummed into me all the time, to holding hands. But we all probably had that without realising it now, that's kind of, it was so often repeated that would be a big thing. For some reason, I also had a massive fear of being sent to prison, and I still do. Like, I'm terrified. I think I'll just die if I go to prison. I don't want to go to prison. And the amount of time I spent thinking about it is probably
You'll end up being like top dog.
Have all the conversations we've had about prison not changed that for you?
No, not really.
You'll be out in 5. Don't worry about it.
Does it feel more familiar and more homely now?
Homely.
No, not at all. And I guess I'd also be very scared of sort of weapons, knives, guns, anything like that. Because again, I never saw them in my life. So it was in my imagination, something very big. Fortunately, I mean, who wants to be seeing guns and knives and stuff, as a small child, unless you're used to it. Yeah, so you're used to it. If you're in those kind of families, people hunting or whatever else, or collecting, that's fine. I was not. So all those kind of things.
I'm not going to say we were hunting, but anyway.
No. Oh, God knows with you lot. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to sort of question you there before we sort of get into the heart of the story, because I think it sort of touches on a couple of things that I think for me as a child would have just been about the most unbearable things I could think of. Anyway, on that note, let me take you to a place with like the best name. I'm going to take you to Chowchilla, and it is spelt like you think, Chowchilla, Chowchilla. Chowchilla. And Chowchilla is actually in California. And I'm taking you back there. I cannot believe it, but I'm taking you back to the fruit basket of the USA.
Salad bowl in the fridge.
I cannot believe how many stories end up sort of taking us to that sort of area. But I think there seems to be a lot of stuff that happens between San Francisco and LA and that sort of the mountains bordering it. That's sort of this inland kind of run where there's sort of not cities, but there's just sort of, I don't know, a lot of agriculture, obviously. And I don't know, it's sort of this other kind of, an other place. Having been there, I don't even know how I could describe it in any better way. So I'm going to take you to Chowchilla, California. The year that we're in is 1976. And we're all born in the 70s, right?
Yes.
So we're all children in the 70s, which I think
yeah.
should help us a little bit envisage what's going to take place. So on the 15th of July, 1976, it was late summer I guess it was high summer really, for the children in Chowchilla, and some of them were going to sort of like I guess you'd call it a summer school, not so much a camp because it was more of a day thing, but with the children that they went to school with, they were doing activities. So it wasn't like going to school per se, but the school district, and it was, conducted from their school. So some kids probably went, some kids didn't, bit of a mix of age groups, whatever else. And on this particular day, there was predominantly very small children, and they had been to the local pool and they were then back at school, and they had been collected by their bus driver, a man called Ed Ray, and Ed Ray was about to take them all home. Now, from what I can understand in terms of where that's sort of heading, when I say it was rural, there were some areas that were actually, they looked nearly desolate, and it wasn't as sort of lush as I had anticipated it, given the name of the school was the Dairyland Elementary School. So I think what is actually happening is within that area, I think there was quite a few different it was quite a big area that there was the catchment area for the school. It wasn't like a little neighborhood. Chowchilla, for instance, only has 20,000 people in it now. So I don't know what the population would have been back then. But it's a small little town, and it currently has, and again, I don't know if they were in the 70s, it has 2 prisons there now. So the population of 20,000, 2 female prisons. It's not a highfalutin area. It's a bit of a, people are sort of living down tracks and whatever else. It really brings a community together.
People living down tracks, it really brings people together.
Well, like a central focus would be the school. That's what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I meant. I mean, I think they live a long way away. I don't think that they're not, a lot of them are probably not neighbours. I got the impression that they're, working on farms or whatever, they're away from each other.
Okay,
but the school would be a real focal point. Anyway, so on this afternoon of July 15th, on the bus they get and home they start to head, and there's a lot of energy on the bus. The kids are excited to be going home. They've been swimming. It's summer. Like, they haven't been at school. They've been having a great time. So, and they're little. Some of them as young as 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're having a high old time on the bus. However, at 3:54 p.m., they come across a van parked across the road, like, a deserted kind of road. They're not on heavy highways or anything like that, back roads kind of thing. And the bus driver pulls up.
Just get in the van. What does he say in Silence of the Lambs?
It's not funny. I think she's about to say that.
And what do you know? Out of the van pops a man with a stocking on his head and a massive gun. Now, again, the stocking on the head, right? The stocking on the head is quintessential robber, bad person from our childhood, right? I don't know if they would do that anymore, do they? But that look, that stocking, so
flat
someone jumps
nose,
out. Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. So imagine that as the first thing that these kids are seeing. So the kids are on the bus looking out. They've all started to pay attention because the bus has stopped. White van, out jumps first guy,
white van,
gun.
Man.
Yeah. With a stocking on his head, pantyhose, of course, and heads across the bus and demands that Ed Ray open the door. And Ed does, after a little bit of, whatever I'm going to do. He gets on, and this man immediately starts threatening the children and telling them to be quiet, shut up, get up to the back of the bus. And then another man comes in, a second guy comes in.
Two of them.
Two. So 2 armed men with stockings over their faces and a busload of 26 young children
kids.
and 1 adult. Ed
Poor
Ray, the bus driver.
yeah.
So they bustle him out to the back, and the other guy, the second man who comes in, takes the seat of the bus driver, ready to drive away. So they, start threatening the kids.
They're taking the whole bus
kidnapping
load.
a busload of children.
I believe we call it hijacking, but it's also kidnapping.
Okay,
yes.
sure.
Oh.
It's both. It's both. It's both.
No
actually.
mistake. Sorry
Yep,
about that.
no mistake. It's both. And in that moment, the man who's standing up threatening the children, he's being very aggressive with them. He's not being kind. He's saying,
man.
This is a gun. Do you want to find out what it does? One child initially stands up thinking it's a joke and is threatened, told to sit down. So he sits down, and then he just tells them all to be quiet.
Shot him.
So some of the kids are whimpering a little bit. But again, most of them are actually so stunned and so scared. There are people, it's more like they're wetting their pants and just they're so little they've got no idea of what's going on, these little kids. So from that point, the white van pulls into place and the bus and the van head off together. So there's a third man. The third man is driving the white van, which they had stopped the bus in.
Disgusting.
Okay? So we're two vehicles, white van leading, bus following, bus being driven by second gunman and first gunman really holding all the kids hostage. What a trip home from school. At the same time, the kids the parents would start to assume their children would be coming in, right? For a little while, there's no problem. And then there's one account of a woman coming out thinking, where are the bloody kids? Kind of thing, they're so quiet. What are they up to? Where have they gone to? And she comes out and she realizes that there's no, what does she say? There's no peanut butter out, and there are not two chairs put in front of the television. You know how that's the kind of thing kids will do?
Yeah.
The kids have not come home. They haven't come home and gone somewhere. They have not come home. So that's 5:00, and she starts to freak out. So
as you would.
And I imagine that was happening all across Chowchilla. So what happens now? The bus and the van head to an area which is about, I looked at it on a map, and it looked like it would take about 16, 17 minutes, so not that far away, but it looked like it was heading to a more remote area. And when they get there, it's called a place called Brenda Slough, and it's on the rivers, a shallow branch of the Chowchilla River. And what have they got there? This is where they hide the bus. So they get there and they take the bus that the kids are in into sort of like this sort of area where they can put some, bush reeds, all that kind of stuff over it. And it's at this point they start to transport the children from the school bus to a van, because there's another van waiting there. And those vans have been modified to ensure that no one knows what's happening inside. So each of the vans has been blacked out.
I don't like this.
No, and inside the vans, they have been soundproofed. So there is sort of like fabric on the roof and then other layers of, taken some effort. Someone's gone to some serious effort to do this. So what they've done is they've taken each child out and just urgently sort of gone, in you get, in you get, in you get, in you get. And this is important to note because when they first left the school, where the bus goes missing, they just kind of disappeared, right? There's no chance. This is the first point where anything is going to happen. So I'm not quite sure because I've read this a different way. In one account, I read that they lifted the children, each child, from there into the van, so there were no footprints. But I couldn't substantiate that in any other footage, and I don't know if it was just said in a reenactment. Where sometimes it could have been a bit of an ad lib. Because I thought that would be a hell of a lot of effort to ensure that there was not one single footprint other than the men. But anyway, bus has gone to the river. They're dumping the school bus, hiding it in a remote area. And at that same place, they had another van waiting, and they're putting the children into the van.
It's a lot of vans. Yeah, okay.
It's a bit of effort being put into that, right?
It's planned.
So, yes.
This is very well planned, yeah.
So they were sort of makeshift jail cells. They'd installed wood paneling, and they'd painted out the windows back so you couldn't see in, you couldn't see out. There was no air or, no air ventilation. And, of course, there was no food, water, toilets, nothing. The kids were just put in there with no idea what was happening, why it was happening, what was going on. So at this point, they leave Brenda Slough, which, again, not far from Chowchilla, lock them all in, and then they head off. And the accounts are that the children were just terrified, crying. At this point, there wasn't anyone in the back with them. They didn't have someone, they weren't at gunpoint. So at this point, I think they were literally talking to each other and crying and saying, I want to see my mum and dad. oh my God, can only imagine the horror. So from here, they've got Ray and the kids in the vans, and they drive them to the California rock and gravel quarry. And it's in Livermore, and it's really it's a lot further. It's 110 miles, 180 Ks, back up towards San Francisco. So if you've got San Francisco, and then we've been sort of, well, obviously 180 kilometers south and inland. And now we're heading back to actually a far more populated kind of area. But there is this quarry, so they're no longer down in that sort of fruit basket. They're now on the outskirts of San Fran. If you were thinking about areas, do you know what I mean? They've moved from one area to a distinctly other area. And when they get to Livermore, it's now the early hours of the next morning. So remember, they've been taken at 3:54, and it's now clocked over into the early hours of July 16.
Poor buggers, poor little tykes.
Why would they take them to a quarry? What could be there? And this is when
shed?
things get
A rock concert.
really kind of distressing.
Oh.
So
Hard labour.
Or water normally. Like, is it a filled quarry?
No, it's not.
Okay.
At the quarry, the van is open.
Rock crusher.
And the kidnappers then approach the children who, again, seem to go totally silent every time the kidnappers have an interaction because they're so scared. They're not crying or screaming or asking for help. They're just
terrified.
What next? Why? Where? What's going on? So at this point, they are literally taken out of the van one by one, and that's really important. And what happens at this stage is they close the door between each one, so they don't know what's happening to the child that's been taken out before them. They assume they're being killed. They don't know.
Torment.
No.
What's actually happening? The kidnappers are asking them for their name and their age. So the kidnappers keep a complete log of each of the 26 children and Ed Ray and their age and write it down on I forgot what it was. Was it Burger King? Was it burger joint?
What?
Serviette. On a serviette.
What?
On a serviette. That's hard
That's
to write
badly
on, right?
Planned. Yeah, that's badly
of all the
planned.
other stuff you've done, you didn't need to bring a piece of paper?
But it's sort of, like the other day I said to someone at work, it's the back of a fag packet plan. And they didn't understand what I was talking about because they're too young, I guess. And then I said, it's just like you scribble something basically down on whatever you have to hand. And they go, like a serviette. I'm like, yeah, or a fag packet. Anyway.
Oh.
So they take one by one out. And at this point, I would like to mention one of the children, and his name is Michael Marshall. And Michael Marshall was unlike any of the children because he was 14 years old, and it was the first time he had ever caught the bus home. And I don't know why that was or that wasn't, but the day before he'd got caught out by his mother drinking beers with his mate, and as punishment, she was so angry, she said, I'm not going to pick you up. I know you're only there for a half day or whatever else. You can come home with the little kids. So it was the very first time Michael had ever been on the bus. And not only that, he nearly missed the bus. So when he had to run for it, it was the last bus of the day and he had to run for it. And he said, I normally wouldn't be on the bus. And secondly, I nearly missed that bus. So I was obviously meant to be on that bus.
Yeah.
And whilst this was happening, and this is actually really nice, he was giving comfort to a lot of the smaller kids. They were looking to him for a bit of guidance. He was just a normal 14-year-old boy. And he said, the kids were terrified. And a lot of the things were just saying, well, I see my mum and dad again. He said, I didn't lie to them. I was saying to them, you will see them. He said, I didn't know if it would be in this life or the next. But he said, I just didn't know what was coming next. How would we know? What? Why? Where? What? What's happening?
Yeah.
It was just, none of it made any sense. So they took many of the small kids out and then Michael, and it's Michael's experience that I can relay to you. So when Michael was taken out, he was asked, what is his name? What is his age? What were his parents' name? He was also asked, and I don't know if the others were. But at 14, I could imagine you'd be able to answer that quite clearly. I don't know at 4 or 5 in that situation how they managed to get the names as accurately as they did, but they were accurately taken. I don't know to the letter or whatever else, but all things considered, it was a very accurate list. From this point, he's then moved across, part of the quarry and taken to a hole.
Oh.
And at this point, he's told he needs to go down the ladder into the hole, not knowing what's down there, but assuming
thank you very much.
that the other kids have gone down there to die, and that's what's going to happen to him.
Jesus.
So what is down there? What is down the hole? And where do they put all of these 26 kids? They've taken them all out individually with Ed and put them all in this hole. So from the ground level, they've gone through a hole with a ladder, taking them down to a room as such. What was the room? The kidnappers had buried a truck trailer. And so by that, it just means that back portion of a truck. Think of it old style.
Yeah.
You know, like the front is the, engine, whatever it's carrying, the cargo. Yeah, whatever the cargo or whatever it is being held. So that bit is what is containing them. So that has been sunken somehow and covered, and they've got a hole for them and a ladder to crawl down. They had buried the truck trailer and converted it into a bunker equipped with ventilation and a pit toilet.
With your bunker.
So they obviously had planned to have them there for a period of time. And the pit toilet apparently was in the wheel hub or something like that.
No one likes a pit toilet.
No.
Accurate.
Doesn't matter how deep you dig that, it's going to be disgusting.
By this point, a lot of the children had
already shit and pissed
had
themselves.
Themselves, all of that already had. Yeah. So it wasn't they like, oh, line up, I'll go. Can I use the toilet after you, please? I don't think there was any of that
I'm
happening.
out of toilet paper.
It was there.
Yeah.
It was stocked with several mattresses for them to sort of sit on.
Oh, good.
And there was a small amount of food and water. So the idea was,
it's a lot of work. I'm exhausted.
You put us here to hold us.
How many vans did we go through? Were there 3 vans or 4 vans?
Yeah.
Oh,
a bus and 2 vans, and now we're on the
digging a
trailer.
hole.
Right. It's a lot going on here. Yeah,
it's a lot, and they couldn't even get a freaking better writing thing than a serviette.
It was a I've just read it. It was a Jack in the Box hamburger wrapper. My mistake.
But I'm with Clarky.
That's so much clearer.
Like, all this planning,
and you just come from a school, no textbooks. What?
It's like I just don't get it.
We buried a trailer so that everyone could be in there.
Who bought the paper?
Exactly right.
What? That was your job.
Oh shit! I forgot. I've got a piece of Jack in the Box serviette here.
Jimmy Ray, that was your job.
Oh God, can you believe it? So they're taken into the van. So they're all down down a hole in the back of this sort of bunker that's being created. Apparently 12 feet underground. And remember, it's in a quarry, so that would not necessarily be. It's not like land. I don't know where it was exactly, but I can imagine it would be sort of a doable thing. Okay, so the food was, in case you're interested, some boxes of cereal, some peanut butter, and loaves of bread. So again, there's some thought.
Peanut butter sangers for everyone. Yeah.
Peanut butter sangers all
I can
around.
imagine everyone's just gone, okay, there's a line for the toilet. I'm going to do sandwiches. Someone's doing drinks. Grab a mattress. We're good.
All we've got is peanut butter.
Anyone got a nut allergy?
Yeah, we all have. Oh, okay then, no worries.
that'd be what would happen nowadays. Back then, no one had nut allergies.
And there were
there a toaster?
No, I don't think there's electricity. No, there were 2 ventilation pipes that provided air for the children. So again, there's been a degree of organisation planning, right? They've had to go to some effort to do this.
Seriously, I'd be worried. Fortunately, these kids were little, but if you had an adult brain in this situation, you'd be like, they can't organise to get a notepad. How do I know that those pipes are going to give enough air into here that we're not all going to die?
Exactly.
Yeah. And how long are they expecting us to be here that a couple of loaves of bread and a jar of peanut butter is supposed to keep us fed? Seriously.
26.
Yeah, I don't think many of them were thinking anything of the sort. I think they were just terrified. Because remember, they were not... Imagine the...
It was just little kiddies,
thought of.
Yeah.
It was dark.
Of course, it was
terrifying. It was night.
Yeah.
So they had given Ed Ray, the bus driver, they had given him a torch. So if that was the only light
and
they had.
Ed Ray's
of course,
down
he didn't
with
know if he
them.
could conserve it. He's with them, yeah.
Is that to make sure they got the right hole when they went to the...
Just extraordinary.
So what happens now? They've got them all in there. I've told you about what's in there in terms of the mattress, the flashlight, the water, the hole for the toilet. So what's stopping them just crawling out? Well, they seal them in there. And it's at this point they start to bury them alive.
Oh my God.
And this is correct. Yep. So,
because I'm trying to work out what would make me go to that much effort, and I can't think of a lot. Like, it just seems exhausting. What are they going to get out of it to make them go, oh, that was worth it?
Exactly. Well, we'll get to that. The ladder is removed. The hatch is covered with a heavy piece of sheet metal, and it weighed 45 kilos. And then it had 2 industrial batteries, I think, on top of that. And then they started to bury them with the surrounding dirt and rock. So the kids inside could hear the soil, like literally the sound of being. So they knew that they were being buried alive. And as Michael Marshall described, he said it was not a short undertaking. It didn't take 5 minutes. It took them a long time. It went on and on and on.
What the fuck?
In terms of your worst nightmares as an adult, little adult, being buried alive, it'd be lovely, right?
Oh.
You've been kidnapped at gunpoint, and now you're being buried alive, and you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 14, and a male adult. I don't think that anybody was handling that situation well. It's just a horror movie, really, isn't it? In terms of what the kids were doing when they were there, Michael said at one point they were singing
the wheels on the bus go round and round.
Not that one. Maybe Twinkle Twinkle. They did a little bit of that. They were just trying to keep them calm and
Twinkle Twinkle's a bit cruel when you're being buried alive. There's no freaking Twinkle
Twinkle. I'm not sure that's a good point, actually. Well, I'll never see that again.
Oh my God.
So at that point, the kidnappers leave the site of the quarry.
What?
Yes, because they've got business to attend to.
Fucking idiot.
They've got a ransom they need to call in.
Here we go.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. But what's happening at the quarry? Well, they head off to get ready for, calling the police. Well, back at the quarry, and after several hours,
Everyone's trying to get out.
Glad you asked.
they're not to start with, they didn't. But when the roof started to cave in,
Oh my God. No.
yeah,
Enough.
because they'd put so much on top, it couldn't hold it.
Oh
so
my God.
Correct. The roof starts caving in. And so at one point,
bad planning. That was the job of the note taker too.
That was not when people were singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." That's when the kids, who had previously been relatively calm for a period,
So
panic
scream
sets
in terror. Oh,
yeah,
and who can blame
conditions were
them?
deteriorating. They've got no air.
Penny,
such
the
limited air.
sky's falling.
They had eaten. They'd started to run out of food, and then of course, with the roof starts caving in.
No, not of course. Then of course. Oh,
So-
whoopsies! Something else went wrong. No.
Well, this is where something good. There's something quite miraculous happens.
Good.
After several hours, Ray and the older children, including Michael's actually pivotal in it, they start to put the mattresses one on top, trying to reach the hatch.
Yeah. Well, that's the roof. That's the roof collapses.
lower.
The hatch will get a bit closer.
There is that. And then what eventually happens after many attempts is Ray is able to lift. Well, actually, they say that it was Michael, the smaller, like the 14-year-old. He was able to get a little bit of light to start with. Like, he was the one who could kind of move it. And then once he could do that, they got the man up there who was stronger to move the piece of wood. I think it was actually the next day. They'd been there overnight. It was like early morning, I think.
Let the sun shine in. This was in the 70s, wasn't it? The sun shine in. No?
I was thinking that one.
Yeah,
Let the
76,
sun shine in, face it with a grin. Smilers never lose and frowners never win. Do you not?
No.
No, they're not. They're not out yet. They're only lifting something.
Okay,
Remember,
sorry.
there's
to get
12
the light
feet
in.
No. There's no light.
Oh, I
That's
thought you
only-
said there was light coming in.
No, you said that.
Oh.
There's
Well,
no
I
light.
did think you said that, but anyway.
No, because that was just to move it across to start with. Oh, what?
Okay. I thought you said that one of the kids saw some light. And
Opened
then they
it
got
up
the
so they
man.
could let the light shine in.
because it was too heavy. I meant like
Right.
Weight.
heavy weight.
Heavy
because it
light
was-
weight.
yeah,
Oh,
light,
right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So they got
was
the younger
just
child was
clarky. I
like,
thought
yeah,
you meant
no.
like a chink of light.
No,
in the
because they're covered in
darkness, right.
dirt. So there's the layer of all the dirt they put on top. Then there's what he's been able to do is with help. They've been able to move this steel plate across, and there was some batteries there or whatever else. And then what they've done is they've sent Michael up, and Michael has been able to dig through the dirt. He's the one who gets to daylight. Okay, so yes, now you can let the daylight in. But I just don't want you to miss the dirt. It's important because that was all the stuff
that
put
would
on
fall
them.
in.
Yeah, correct. At that point, 16 hours apparently after being imprisoned, although this is where it gets a little bit confusing for me because it would contradict what I'm about to say in a minute. But after a very long period of time taken from school in the afternoon, it's definitely the next day. It's not that night. It's not the early hours of it. It's now into the next day. Ray and the children, one by one, they're able to get them out of the bunker and they walk to the quarry guard's shack. But then there's no information about what then happens. So does that mean that there was a guard there the whole time? I don't know. Suffice to say, it seems to go from there and it jumps to the police being called and them being, then they know where they are. Because at the same time, there are airplanes flying over Chowchilla and that whole district looking for an abandoned bus or whatever else, because they're 180 k's up the road.
Yeah, God.
Whilst this giant search is happening, not quite in the same area, everybody, can you imagine what's going on in Chowchilla? So in Chowchilla, a bus with 26 children is missing. So the National Guard are brought in, the police, everyone is going absolutely nuts. So where are our kidnappers? What are they doing? What are they waiting for? Well, unfortunately for them, they can't get through the police station because everybody's calling the police station. So they are unable to make their ransom demand.
Yeah, deliver their ransom demand. Goodness me.
That's fantastic. I reckon the same bloke who had to planned the note-taking and the roof scenario.
All lines are busy, I'm
Call
sorry.
back again.
Everything else is so good.
It's 1976. It's not 2024. There are other ways.
Police Department.
However many on the circular dial.
Have we got the name of any other police station? No.
I don't understand how that worked. Right? They didn't contact anyone. So
911.
Apparently, at one point they went back to sleep.
No, that didn't exist.
They couldn't get through, so they slept. So they couldn't get through.
What else are you going to do?
It's exhausting. All this
All
dialing.
these people.
So they're like, we'll get to it. So what happens with the children? The children are taken to, they're all collected and they're taken to a nearby prison because it was the only place that could offer them medical help straight up.
She's got all of it.
I know, right? So, no, I don't know that they would necessarily know that's where they were, but they were there and obviously given medical attention and food and water. And
where can I collect my child?
the biggest issue was with a lot of them had urinary tract infections because some of them had tried to hold on the whole
hanging
time.
On for ages, the poor little buggers.
Things like that. They had some scratches and bruises, but I mean, other than that, they were all fine. They just wanted to go home and they were little kids, just like, what was that? Oh my God, I told my mum and my dad.
That was weird.
That's the worst school excursion I've ever been on.
Absolutely.
I want to go home and watch HR Puff and stuff.
Meanwhile, their families were still in Chowchilla, and after they've been to the prison, they take all the kids back to Chowchilla. And of course, on their arrival, the media's there, and they've been reunited with their families. And of course, that's quite gorgeous.
God.
Let me tell you a little bit about what was supposed to happen with the ransom. On July 16th, telephone lines to the Chowchilla Police Department were jammed with calls from media and frantic families. The kidnappers, therefore, were unable to issue their $5 million ransom demand, which would be equivalent to $26.8 million last year. They decided to call back later, and they fell asleep. When they awoke later in the evening, they saw television news reports that the victims had freed themselves and were safe. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah, save the money for the phone call now.
Meanwhile, the FBI had immediately begun investigating a certain 24-year-old Frederick Newhall Woods IV. Because he was the son of Frederick Nickerson Woods III, who was the owner of the California Rock and Gravel Quarry.
Oh, goodness.
The FBI discovered the younger Woods had keys to the quarry, unlimited access and free use of its facilities, and additionally, Woods and two friends, brothers, James and Richard Schoenfeld, aged 24 and 22, respectively, had been previously convicted of motor vehicle theft, for which they had been sentenced to probation. It didn't take them long to find out who they thought was behind this, but it didn't really make a lot of sense, and I'll go on to tell you why. The FBI obtained and executed a search warrant for Hawthorne, the 78-acre Woods estate in Portola Valley. In the younger Woods' room, investigators found journals, a draft of the ransom demand, maps, notes, plans, receipts,
Burger Joe's.
receipts of the vans and the trailer, false identification, one of the guns used in the kidnapping, and the hamburger wrapper on which were written the names and ages of each kidnapped child.
You fucking idiots.
Unbelievable, right?
Fucking idiots.
The notes outlined plans to have the ransom money dropped from a plane into the Santa Cruz Mountains at night and retrieve it under the cover of darkness. Also discovered was a rental contract for a storage facility.
That would be hard.
There, the FBI found the vans used to transport the victims, as well as a getaway vehicle, a Cadillac spray painted with flat black night camouflage.
I hate flat black coloured cars, though. They're becoming very trendy now. I hate flat painted. Yeah.
So the FBI issued warrants for the arrest of Woods and the two Schoenfeld brothers. 8 days after the kidnapping, Richard Schoenfeld voluntarily surrendered to authorities. 2 weeks later, James Schoenfeld was arrested in Menlo Park, which I've been to. Menlo Park is where Facebook is.
Menlo Park, is it? Right.
Yeah. So that's back further down where it's actually where they're from, and I'll get to that later. Later the same day, Woods was arrested by the RCMP in Vancouver, which is the Mounted Police,
Royal
Canadian Military
Canadian
Mounted
Police.
Mounted Police, yeah, in British Columbia in Canada. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about these men, these three kidnappers? It just beggars belief, really. So Michael Marshall says in the simplest of terms, I don't know why they did it. They were all from money. They'd gone broke at one point, but broke is a loose term, right? They were broke, so they asked their parents for a loan. They got a loan. They did another business venture, and they went broke again. So they didn't really feel comfortable going and asking for more money because they'd kind of not been very successful like their parents had. So they had to find an alternative plan. So they've got them all in custody. We start to find out what was the motive. Why would you do this? James Schoenfeld stated that despite coming from wealthy parents, he and Woods were deeply in debt. In fact, one of them owned $23,000 at the time. And so
that was a lot in 76, though.
Yes, yeah. And his reasoning was we needed multiple victims to get multiple millions. And we picked children because children are precious. The state would be willing to ransom for them. Yeah. And they don't fight back. They're vulnerable. You know, they'll be all right. And I had read somewhere that where this originally come, this idea for a ransom and it being okay to do it in California, was because he had, I think it was James? Yes, same guy, James, had seen on the news that the state of California had a $1 billion, oh God, what's the opposite of debt? Surplus. Yeah. He saw the headline Ronald Reagan put out to the press that the state of California had $1 billion surplus. So I guess, was Ronald Reagan the governor of California maybe in the 70s maybe? I kept thinking the state's got more money than it needs. Because I often think that too, don't you? Certainly coming from Western Australia, I often think the state's got more money than it needs.
We don't have that problem in Victoria.
Governor of California.
Yeah. I kept thinking the state's got more money than it needs. They won't miss $5 million. I wasn't going to commit any crimes, risk my life or risk my reputation or anything less than $1 million. So a bank robbery,
I wasn't going to commit any crimes. So I was just going to,
but a bank robbery wouldn't work.
Hijack and kidnap 26 kids.
A bank robbery wouldn't work. A drug deal wouldn't work. I didn't know anything except a kidnapping that I'd seen on TV that would provide sufficient reward. So they're thinking, it's the dollar amount that they're really after. It's not how, but there are certain ways they've had to go, well, I just don't think we're going to be able to guarantee we can get that kind of money if we just do a simple bank robbery. We've got to think bigger. And that's where they arrived at the multiple victims equals multiple millions, and how they were then going to concentrate their efforts on children, because they knew that no matter what, people would always be willing to pay for children to be returned.
A lot of money for children, of course they would.
Yeah. All three pleaded guilty to kidnapping for ransom and robbery, but refused to enter a guilty plea to infliction of bodily harm. As a conviction on that count, in conjunction with the kidnapping charge, carried a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. That is what they initially got, all three of them.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, yes, they kidnapped these kids. They didn't kill them. They might have killed them if they weren't careful. If that roof had collapsed,
oh my God,
everyone in there could have died and been buried alive. But they wouldn't have necessarily that had been their intention.
Yes. Well, the bodily harm component was overturned.
Yeah.
Because it was found that the physical injuries sustained were not, or they didn't meet the standard for bodily harm under the law. So all that changed was they still had a life sentence, but now they had the possibility for parole. So that's where the difference lied. So Richard was paroled in 2012. James, his brother, was 2015. And then significantly later than that, Woods was paroled after 46 years in 2022.
Why did he get so long?
Well, because he was more of the mastermind in terms of
the organizer.
Yes. Yeah. And also because of the way he behaved.
46 years.
But 46 years does seem extreme.
So in October 2019, Woods was denied parole for the 19th time. So he'd asked a lot. Yeah. And the reasons given for the denials included his continued minimisation of the crime, as well as
nothing. I don't know why I'm even here.
But he continued to do that. At one point, he talked, and quite late in the piece, how he tried to devise in his mind whilst in prison a better version of the trailer that they put them in. that would have done the job properly.
Okay, fair enough. You can just leave him there.
So, and each time he went to parole trial, they had a number of the children would turn up, well, now adults, a number of the 26 kids would turn up.
Talk about that shit, the trauma that they had.
Yeah. He also had disciplinary infractions for possession of contraband pornography and cell phones. And Woods, interestingly, married 3 times while in prison, and this is important.
It happens.
He purchased a mansion about half an hour away. How could he do that? Well, he is the heir to 2 of California's wealthiest families.
To the Quarryman? Or was that the other one?
Yeah. The Newhalls and the Woods. He inherited a trust fund from his parents that was described in one court filing as being worth $100 million, equivalent to $127 million in 2023. So that's probably why he's bought a mansion. He's got 3 wives. But he didn't... I can't believe that someone who came from that kind of... Well, I can believe, actually, that someone from that kind of money... was, I don't know, so stupid, so desperate. It's all wrong. It's all kinds of wrong,
isn't it? It's just dumb.
Yes.
It's just dumb.
Yeah.
He's an idiot.
Okay.
It just sounds like an absolute fucking idiot.
Yeah, with complete disregard for everyone else. It's
correct.
Him at all cost kind of thing. Ugh.
That's correct. I've got an interview here. I just want to read a couple of things from it, and then I want to move on to a little bit more focus on the kids and what happened with them. But just briefly, a little bit more on, in James Champel's own words, why did they do this? So someone asking him point blank, why did you do it? And this is some of the stuff that he has to say, because it's so odd. It's sort of like,
too many
the young
drugs.
men were healthy
were they on
and
drugs
wealthy
at the time?
No, wealthy and healthy by any measure. They came from like good homes, went to college. It was just bizarre.
They didn't need to do it.
No, of course not. And to go to all this effort, it took, apparently, I read somewhere, but I only read it once, so you never know if it's true. It took them 2 years to, well, actually, one of the victims said it took them 2 years. I don't know if it did, but there was a significant amount of planning. If it was 2 years, it was 2 years. But I think, to hire everything, to create things, to do what they did, it was not
but all the money you spent on hiring, you could have paid off that $23,000 debt.
And that is very true. So before this, they had, when he was saying that he was dead. So this is James speaking. Actually, let me read it out because it'll play out what they actually did with some of the money beforehand. They're not good guys, I don't think. Why did you take the children? And he answers, this is James Chappell, in Atherton. Again, I've been to Atherton. It's in that same area. It's in Silicon Valley, but it was not Silicon Valley at that time. It's just an area that's a nice area outside of San Francisco. In Atherton, I was no longer something special. I was not special at all. So I wanted to be. Have that feeling again. I want to fit in with these new people that we moved next to. And, my friend's parents had twin Ferraris. His and hers with telephones in them. I had no money of my own. My dad lent me some money. I bought a Jaguar. I found out that the insurance was more than I made in a whole year. So 2 months later, I had to sell the Jaguar. I was 19. I was working full-time as a busboy. I was also going to college. I mean, it's hardly a sob story, is it?
Poor little rich kids.
Well, I'm
so
sorry.
bad.
When I was 19, I might have been driving my sister's Mazda that we bought for $500. The actual insurance and rego cost more than the car itself.
Yep.
And we drove that baby until she died. And then we got a Dado that cost about the same. Fuck off.
Do you know the song I Was Only 19 by Red
Yeah.
Gum?
Do you think we should change it to this?
I reckon, that's a song of 19-year-olds going off to war, not 19-year-olds getting given a Jaguar and realising that they can't afford the repayments or the insurance, whatever it was.
I had to live on my daddy's millions. I could only buy a Jaguar.
Mum and Dad had Ferraris with matching phones.
Unbelievable.
God.
He says, I had envy issues trying to fit in with one crowd and my other friends. They were getting married. They were buying houses. They were on their own career paths. It's just like, isn't this what everyone goes through at like that age? Oh gosh, I think I'm going to have to kidnap children.
But this is why envy is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, it's what I know. And I was falling behind them and I just figured I need money. Money would solve all my problems.
And why money is the root of all evil.
I felt I couldn't earn my way out of my problem. At this stage, I kept saying at this stage, James was about $23,000 in debt at the time of the crime.
Deal.
With an eerie
It's
child.
121.
Yeah.
By the way, at the time I did a converter. It's $121,000 of debt. So it's not a small amount.
No,
in
I
today's
suppose not.
money, that
No.
would have been 121.
I mean, there'd be
At
plenty
19,
of
that's
people
quite a
who
lot.
have mortgages
But
that
their
are worse
fucking
than that.
family are rich.
But
And they
listen,
don't
that
steal
Jaguar.
kids.
listen.
Correct.
Some of the money he owed to Fred Woods, one of the other guys, right?
One of the Woodses.
No, one of the heirs to the mega fortune. After that, as a share in another money making scheme, Woods had borrowed money from a cousin to move to a mansion in Mountain View. That did not pan out. They used some of the money to buy cars and boats from the surplus.
Oh, boats are
And to finance the
depreciating
kidnapping.
asset. Do not buy a boat. It will depreciate immediately and it never gets its value back.
That's right.
These idiot boys.
So,
And to finance the kidnapping. You know, hang on. I just need to make sure we've got an extra couple of thousand so we can kidnap 26 kids. FYI. After I've bought the boat and the car.
now I had to look this up because I did mention it, then you may have missed it. Woods had borrowed money from a cousin to move to a mansion.
Yeah, I heard it. I didn't miss
this
it.
mansion is like, I looked it up. There's this real house in Mountain View, and it's this. I don't know why they wanted to buy the mansion, but they wanted to buy this mansion. It still exists now, like it's some listed property.
Is he buying the mountain or just a mountain?
to
Mansion
buy.
or just moving to it? Buy
They
it.
just wanted to buy it. I don't know what went wrong, didn't go wrong. So that didn't work out. So they just bought some cars and boats, and then they used the rest to finance the kidnapping. So it's not like they didn't put it to good use. Boats, cars, kidnapping. How crazy.
Didn't
Just
squander
pay
it.
your goddamn other debt off.
The interviewer, Gail Marshall, then says, "Why didn't you ask your money from your father?" My dad had an investment group that hired a man to sell bonds, and he ran off with $5 million, so I knew my father was having financial problems of his own. I was rationalising. Nobody would do this if they weren't lying to themselves. I twisted things around. I was telling myself I'd never get out of debt. My dad was pressuring me to get a profession. He wanted the best for me. He wanted me to have a profession, something I could fall back on. I wasn't ready to settle
Get
down.
a fucking job,
project.
you little
Yeah.
loser.
I just wanted to play. I wanted to ride motorcycles and fly balloons and stuff. I had very low self-esteem because high school, everything I tried, I'd failed at. I tried getting my broker's license. The real estate market fell through. I couldn't even get a job as a salesperson. My dad couldn't accept failure or weakness. I know, right?
You poor little rich boy.
Now, I've told you why
I have
kidnapped.
no sympathy whatsoever. Anyway.
I feel like he still hasn't answered the question as to why he hijacked a bus full of 26 kids. You've just given us a stupid sob story that no one cares about.
It's weak, isn't it? I mean,
None of that makes you
it's
do any of
such a
that.
strange crime. Really odd.
That's because we didn't grow up as these boys, though, right? So if we grew up in that world with all that pressure around us, we probably still wouldn't be assholes.
Obviously, they don't know the
Correct.
difference between good and bad, right and wrong. Now, this will lead me on to the next part quite nicely. So the final question I want to pose, or was posed to him, was, do you really understand what you did? And his answer is
No.
quite insightful. The 27 people aren't the only victims. And then in a class for long-term offenders, we take a pen and we draw a circle and another circle. And they actually take the
Venn
students,
diagram?
and they put us in another circle, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you're the perpetrator and you're the victim. And the next circle, they move the students in there. Okay, you're the family of the victim. You're the family of the perpetrator. And then they put more students in the next circle and they show that it just starts with the crime and it just spreads out. They teach you a parent is affected by something that happens to a child because the parents expect to be able to protect the child. But when they can't protect the child, something happens. They feel responsible. So they've got anxiety, bitterness, anger, self-esteem issues. They weren't able to protect their child. The same thing happened to all of their parents. We took their kids and the parents couldn't do anything about it. We took the victims by force. They were completely helpless. That leaves a victim with poor self-esteem. They might even question God. There is emotional, financial, spiritual, and physical injuries. I put them in a place that endangered their life. There was 100 things that could have happened that this really could have come out far worse. And ain't that the truth?
Yep.
I'm going
It
to
is
say he does
unbelievable.
understand what he's done at least. Someone's taught him well.
Well, that's one of them. So that leads me on to...
Not the one who did 46
No,
years because
he's
he's
just-
a dick.
I'd love to know.
It didn't matter how many times they said, mate, this is
No.
a Venn diagram. This is what you've
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
It's like, I don't give a
He
shit.
said,
if I just reinforced that fucking trailer better, we wouldn't be in this situation. They wouldn't have tried to get out.
And also, I've got another wedding in 15 minutes to get to, and I'm dealing with the purchase of the mansion down the road. So,
excuse me, I've got to buy a McLaren.
Yeah.
Apparently Oscar Pistorius is no longer on the wait list.
And he'd also be going, all those people you keep putting in circles are the ones who made me do what I did. They're all evil. They're not victims.
It must be just an embarrassment, really, to have done it. Really? Like, who would go, oh, guys.
Imagine Frederick Wood III just going,
I know, right?
You have brought shame on our house.
Oh, the poor kids. Anyway, so.
Probably shouldn't have fucked
What's
my cousin
interesting
then.
is how this Chowchilla case went on to affect laws and mental health. Well, I'm going to cut straight to chase. Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Stress disorder,
This was well before that, trust me. So few thought at the time to look at what the kidnapping had done to the children's mental health. There was little consideration of how its effects might follow them into adulthood. After all, the field of child trauma psychiatry was still in its infancy. Most experts believed that kids were endlessly resilient and they'd just get over it, traumatic events. Diagnoses for post-traumatic stress disorder, even for war veterans, didn't exist yet. There was sort of a wish that children would recover. You know, you want them to, right? Forget about the event and go on with their lives as though it never happened, said Dr. Spencer F. ETH, Chief of Mental Health with the Miami VA healthcare system, who is not involved with the Chowchilla case. Great quote to use, Carla. But one doctor decided to take a closer look. In the aftermath of the Chowchilla kidnapping, a Los Angeles organisation took the kids to Disneyland in an effort to help them recover. The local school offered little in the way of therapy or counselling. One mental health professional predicted that one of the 26 would be emotionally affected by the kidnappings. And that was put out there. That was a statement. Exactly.
Just pick one.
And I think it was dangerous that was out there.
No. That's disgusting.
It's bad.
No parent wanted to admit his kid was the one in the 26. But after Dr. Lenore Terre arrived in Chowchilla in November, she found, and I don't know what year that is, she found the prediction was dead. Oh, I presume it was 76. Parents were terrified because 5 months after the incident, they could still hear their kids screaming in their sleep.
Oh.
No parent wanted to admit that their kid was the one in 26. By the time I got there, 100% were having problems.
Of course they were. Don't worry, only one's going to be upset. Are you fucking dumb?
So Terre was just a child psychiatrist in training in San Francisco at the time, but she was fascinated by the burgeoning field of child trauma research. What happened, she said, to kids who were scared to death but hadn't died? Because that's literally what happened, right? You're scared to death, but then it doesn't actually happen. The only thing that didn't happen was it didn't die. Everything else did happen. When a colleague sent Terre an article about the Chowchilla kidnapping, she realised that it was a natural case study and that she'd been waiting nearly a decade to find. A group of kids who all had experienced the exact same traumatic event.
She spent her life
although they were
trying to find this moment.
Yeah, although they were physically unharmed, all of them from the youngest to the oldest.
Just need to find a really great case study about people who have been scared to death but not died. Just scared to death, not died. Where can I find them?
That kidnapping and the threat of death left an imprint that many of them never fully recovered from. And we know now, decades later, that this is the usual course of events following catastrophic trauma. Over the years, she would meet with small groups of parents and 23 child survivors who had remained in Chowchilla, interviewing each one for an hour at least. Often she said they'd run for 2 or 3. Every child she talked with carried mental scars from the kidnappings. They manifested differently though. For some, their self-esteem plummeted, while others became paranoid and anxious at seeing vans. Night terrors were common among the children. Absolutely. At the time, the Chowchilla parents were told not to enter their children's rooms. Doing so, experts thought, would reward the behaviour of having nightmares.
Oh, my God.
Oh, for fuck's
yeah,
sake,
let's
don't
reward a
console your
nightmare.
children.
Piss off.
So I think everybody kind of thought when they got home everything would be okay, but it just really wasn't. They all would have nightmares, sleepwalking.
Oh, little buggers.
Yeah, and then kind of the upshot of it is that the woman, Terre, continues to go back, every so many years, every 5 years or 4 years, whatever else, and continues to
It's like that, do you remember that
interview them.
program? Was it 7 Up? It was where they went every 7 years.
Oh, yes,
so
I know, it's in
7,
English.
14,
Yep.
21, yeah.
Yep.
It's like that, only for children who have had an incredibly traumatic experience.
All the children struggled with fears relating to kidnapping. 20 of the 23 feared being kidnapped again. The vast majority feared everyday experiences, being alone, the dark, strangers and loud noises. So most of them just had the demons with them forever. A lot of them struggled with, of course, substance abuse, mental health issues. For some, the psychological toll of kidnappings became consuming. Mike Marshall, who was the 14-year-old who I told you about, who helped really lead the kids to the escape from underground trailer, when staying in Chowchilla became too much to bear, his family left to try and forget the past. And for a long time, I think he seemed to really struggle with it. He did, of course, he really struggled with it, but he couldn't see himself as being a hero. And it's only been in the last little while, and I think there's a documentary that they've made that I wasn't able to watch in Australia because it was also just too hard. But there has been a shift for him because a lot of the younger children were able to come to him as adults and saying to him, "Oh my God, thank God you were there. It was you. You were our hero. You saved us. You gave us comfort." And because I've seen him interviewed, so obviously I sort of can speak to that. But, you know, he said, "I didn't realise how much of an impact I'd had, and that has helped me in my latter years." You've talked about Ray. Ray received the California School Employees Association citation for outstanding community service. Before he died on May 17, 2012, he was visited by many of the school children he had helped save. In 2015, Chowchilla renamed the Sports and Leisure Park as the Edward Ray Park and declared every February 26, Ray's birthday, Edward Ray Day. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
It is.
Yes. In 2016, the 25 surviving victims settled a lawsuit they had filed against their kidnappers. The money they received was paid out of Frederick Wood's trust fund that I mentioned earlier.
Brilliant.
And although the exact settlement amount was not disclosed, one survivor stated that they had each received enough to pay for some serious therapy, but not enough for a house, which seems a bit cheap. And that, my friends...
I just don't understand why the man who had $120 million while still in jail hasn't been forced to compensate all these people.
Probably because it was held in trust and it wasn't his. They would have done it the family wouldn't have given it to him, you know what I mean? It would have been on his release, or there'd be some shenanigans involved, which meant that they would never have to give it to those people. So the program that I had watched was called House of Horrors Kidnapped, and it was season 2, episode 7, and it was called Buried Alive. So that's why I didn't tell you. Kidnapped,
that's why you
Buried
started
Alive.
with what was your
Kidnapped, Buried Alive.
fear?
Because I just think it covers so many childhood fears, right? Like, okay, all that's happened to you now. Back home you go, back to school. You'll be right.
Yeah. Just suck it up, princess. You're fine. Oh, my kitty aunt. Right, so to sentencing. Thoughts?
I had a really clear thought on what I wanted to do this afternoon, and now it's not quite escaped me, but it's less clear. I thought it was really interesting at the time. I think it would only be for one, or maybe the brothers, maybe not Fred Woods, because I don't know what I'm going to do with him. But for the other two who had a level of remorse and certainly got to a point where they could understand the impact that it had on other people, I was trying to imagine this sort of...
Trapped in a Venn diagram. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like it's not quite a punishment so much as a scenario, and it's an awful component which I'm uncomfortable with. But let's say it had gone to plan. Let's say they had called and the people were desperate to get their children back, and they gave them the money, and you know it wasn't even as difficult as being dropped over the Santa Cruz mountains, but they got the money. So they got their money. They were freed. No one knew who it was. But let's imagine at the same time that the children, that the roof fell on the children, and
God.
all 26 of them perished,
okay.
right? So what life would they have then led? Would you ever be free knowing that you'd been responsible for murdering?
It took for someone to draw them a fucking Venn diagram for them to understand.
Correct. I know. That's kind of where I was thinking. I was like, I didn't want to have to say about the children dying because that was hard enough to even say, but they just, I don't know what to do. But what are they? There must be. It's weird. I've said that about 100 times. I don't understand why they thought that would ever be.
This is a great plan. This is brilliant. Let's do this. No, let's not. What fucking...
So
I want more money though. Well, all right. Okay, let's do it. It seems like the best thing to do.
But not even a little bit more money. 5 million more.
I mean, you're going to come into 120 million at some point, but, you know, sure. Let's just do this now. I've got a sentence.
Go on.
Oh, good.
And it goes down the path of your great fear thing.
Yep.
So I'm going to sentence them to end up in, it wasn't quite buried alive, but what would we describe it, like a well of Jane gum. You know, Silence of the Lambs.
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, so Swanny's like, I don't know what you're talking about because she's never seen Silence of the Lambs. But
I have, but it would have been so traumatic for me that I probably blocked it out.
So Jane Gum is this murderer in Silence of the Lambs and has this house, and somewhere in the house is like a well or something like that. And poor James' victim is put in the well to lose weight so that James can make a skin suit out of the victim. So I think these three idiots need to be popped into a well. Not necessarily, you know.
Oh, I've forgotten.
It's just the terror of it, like to experience the terror of being in a place that is subterranean and they can't get out and they are at the whim of some fucking lunatic, because that's what these poor kids were, and the bus driver, and just put in this space, and you know, maybe they have to lose some weight, and then maybe they are told it puts the lotion on
its skin, or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, I feel like that is where these idiots have to end up, with Jane Gum and just victim to that.
Yeah, good one.
Well done.
Go on, Clarky.
Like listening, Swanny, when you were describing their answer to why did you do it, and they went off with this list of, you know, the traumas that they've had. I don't think any of them were bad, and you know, maybe they just didn't describe them well, but they just sounded so privileged. No,
they weren't bad.
You're
got 100% right there.
Yeah, and so, you know, I've had all of these traumas that aren't really traumas, and therefore my only thing that I can do is hijack a bus of 26 children and bury them alive for ransom money. Like, it's so gross.
It's a leap.
But also, you mentioned that they'd tried to set up two businesses previously and they'd both gone bankrupt. And I can see a link between the terrible planning for this kidnapping and the businesses going broke, which makes me just think that they are just dumb as fuck, like complete losers.
Yeah.
And so, do you know the show Beavis and Butthead?
I'm sorry, they're entrepreneurs. Yeah,
they're kind of these pimply-faced kids who are so stupid and they just laugh at their own jokes. I never really liked the show. Well, kind of, yeah. Except when we laugh, we don't go.
That's it.
So I feel like I want them to live out their lives at Who Framed Roger Rabbit style. So in reality, but they're cartoon Beavis and Buttheads just going around going, and everyone else, like well, that's what it feels like. They're just so
idiots,
so
just
gross.
so dumb.
Yeah, I know, right?
So infinitely dumb.
Yes, then next time they try to go and run a business and Beavis and Butthead go in trying to pitch their business plan on Burger Joe's napkin,
Jack in the Box.
Everyone gets straight away says Beavis and Butthead and just discount them as fucking idiots. Like, God.
All right, Swanny. That was a cracker. Never heard of it before.
Oh, good.
So that was news to me, and
Chowchilla.
I'm very glad that no one died.
Yeah.
Because when you started, I thought, my God, we're going to have 26 kids and some poor bus driver dead by the end of this. I don't know if I can cope.
Yeah.
So
correct. And then at the same time, you're thinking, gosh, hang on, how could I have not heard of it? And that's probably because they survived.
Yeah, probably. And I'm so glad they survived. I can't believe anyone can be that dumb. But there you go. Beavis and Butthead, it is. Oh, it's so creepy. It's revolting.
That's awful.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, miss you already.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine. Or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from Pixabay.com.